Greetings and welcome to a new topic for the year, which is fractions. We are going to do a ton of work with fractions this year, but we're going to start off today talking about common denominators. So the first problem says write 1/3 and 1/4 as fractions with common denominators. So generally, this is going to be our work here, our process. First, we're going to find a common denominator between the two fractions, and then we're going to change each fraction into an equivalent fraction using that denominator. So two ways to do this. One way is to make a list. So we know our denominators are 3 and 4, so we're going to find multiples of 3 and multiples of 4. Remember, multiples means like skip counting by 3, so 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24. I can go on, but I'm going to just stop when I run out of space because I think that's probably enough. Then I'm going to count my multiples of 4. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, and I'm going to stop there because this is a higher number. I won't need as many. I could do more if I wanted to. I like counting by 4s. Then I'm going to look at my to list and I'm going to circle common multiples, numbers that they have in common. 3 is in this line but not in this line. 6 is in this line but not in this line. So those are not numbers that I can circle. Here I see one that looks good. 12 is in a multiple of 3 and also a multiple of 4. Now if I kept going, I could see that there's more. 24 is also a common multiple. But it makes, in this case, generally speaking, it's easier to start with to use a lower number. So I'm going to use 12. So 12 is going to be my common denominator. That is what I'm going to change both fractions into fractions over 12. So I'm going to fill 12 in to the denominators of each of those. And then I have to think backwards a little bit. What did I have to do to turn 3 into 12? Well, I multiplied 3 times 4, so I'm going to have to do the same thing with the numerator, times 4. Whatever I do the denominator, I do the same, multiply it by the same thing in the numerator. 1 times 4 is 4, so 1/3 is equivalent to 4/12. And then I have to do the same thing over here. It's a new problem, though. What did I do to 4 to get it into 12? 4 times 3 equals 12. So same thing in my numerator. 1 times 3 equals 3. So my new fractions are 4/12 and 3/12. I am done because the direction says to write these as fractions with a common denominator, and now they do have a common denominator. Now, another way I can do this is just to multiply by the other denominator. Here's sort of like a shortcut. It's a trick that will always work. You'll learn it's not always a shortcut, though. Sometimes it actually takes longer. So if I have 1/3 and 1/4, I just take the opposite denominator and I multiply by that. 1/3, I'm going to multiply each of those times 4. Times 4, and I will end up with 4 and 3 times 4, 12. And then for this one, I'm going to look at my other denominator here, which is 3, and I'm going to say times 3 times 3, which will give me 3/12. Checks out. It's the same thing I got up here, and these are a common denominator. Now, this is cool because it's a trick that always works, but it's not always the quickest solution. So let's look at another example, see what I'm talking about. This problem says find a common denominator of 1/6 and 1/9. Rewrite the pair of fractions using the common denominator. So I might think, hey, I just learned this cool new trick where I can just multiply times the other fraction's denominator. So this is a 9, so I'm going to take this fraction and just multiply the numerator and the denominator both times 9. That's super cool. So I'll end up with 9, and then 6 times 9 is, you remember? 54. Okay. Same thing over here. Let's hope this works. I'm going to multiply by the other denominator, so times 6 and times 6, and I'll end up with 6 over 54. Now that's all well and good. I have answered the problem, 9/54 and 6/54, but it turns out that if I was just to list out the multiples of each of these, 6, 12, 18, and then the multiples of 9, 9, 18, it turns out there is a much smaller common denominator. If I really stopped and think about 6 and 9, I would have gotten that right away, hopefully. So really, I could have changed 1/6 into a fraction over 18, and 1/9 also into a fraction over 18, thinking this is going to be 6 times 3, so I have to do times 3. 3/18, and then this one is times 2 times 2. So 3/18 versus 2/18, which is just smaller numbers to work with than using 54. So two different ways of doing this, one which will always work no matter what, and one which will usually get you to a simpler number to look at, a smaller denominator, so it might be easier to work with later on. Here's an example for you to try. Write 3/4 and 1/6 as equivalent fractions with common denominators. So, first question, I guess, is which method do you think you want to use? This isn't a right or wrong answer necessarily, but tell me, do you like using the writing out a list method or the multiply by the other denominator method? Interesting. All right. Now, for this particular problem, what is the common denominator that you can use for these two fractions, 3/4 and 1/6? All right, I hope that you either got 12 as your common denominator or 24 as your common denominator. Either of those will work, and if you got something other than those, then maybe try watching this video over again from the beginning. All right, now finish this out. Find the equivalent fractions and tell me what are the equivalent fractions that you found. Neat. So I'll check your work that you entered, but go ahead and check your own work yourself here. You should have either gotten 9/12 and 2/12 or 18/24 and 4/24, and either of these sets of answers works because 9/12 is equivalent to 18/24. They're the same. As long as, and 2/12 is equivalent to 4/24. As long as you found two fractions that have the same denominator, common denominator, then you did answer this question. If it asked for the least common denominator, that's when you would have to use the one with the lower number here. Thanks. Good work. See you next time.